Hi, thanks for joining us for the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South. I'm Chris Cooper. Nurseries are full of all kinds of interesting plants. Today we're going to show you how to pick the best plant and some things to watch out for. Also, stop crepe myrtle. How to prune crepe myrtles correctly. That's just ahead on the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South.
Production funding for the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South is provided by the WKNO Production Fund, the WKNO Endowment Fund, and by viewers like you. Thank you.
Welcome to the Family Plot. I'm Chris Cooper. Joining me today is Joellen Diamond. Joellen is the Director of Landscape at the University of Memphis, and Wes Harper will be joining me later. All right, Joellen, what are these bad plants doing here with us?
We have to show the bad with the good.
Oh, so it's the bad with the good.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's talk about some of these bad plants that we have
Well,
here.
the first one here is a beauty of the, it would be it's not a bad shape for a boxwood of this size, but the color is terrible. It's not green, for one thing. And so I would avoid plants that in the nursery that are, not a nice solid color green like they're supposed to be.
Okay.
So yeah, I would avoid this plant. I don't know if it's from winter or if it has a disease. It's hard to tell, but I would wait till some nice green ones came in to choose those.
Okay.
And would not pick this one.
You would not pick this one, all right.
And then this one here, it's really sparse. And you want to shake a plant too, make sure there's no white flies on it, and inspect them, make sure there's no aphids sitting on them, because that's a common problem in nurseries of plants that have been there for a while that might look like this. Also here, they've got some weeds in the top, and then look at the roots are all coming out of the base of the plant. So that means this plant is most likely root bound. And if we can lift it up a little bit, we see how root bound it actually is. One thing is though, with the bad roots, there are some good, nice colored roots, so might have possibility with this one, but I would rather buy one that doesn't have as many problems.
Right.
Next, we want to make sure there's no leaf spot diseases on them, like powdery mildew or these leaf spot diseases.
Wow.
And of course, this shape is not good. It's not nice and even. It's not a good coloration. It's got diseases, and it's got a few weeds on top. But when let's see if we can.
Yeah, can you get it out of
this
here?
is the thing. It must have been in the nursery a while because it's definitely root bound. And when we take the container off, we see there's very few roots that are alive. They're mostly all got a brown color on them, which means they have root rot. And this plant has got lots of problems. And I would just try to avoid plants like this in the landscape.
Wow.
I don't want to bring it home. Taking the plant out of the container, you should be able to do that at a nursery because you want to look at the root system. You're buying the root system and the top. You want to make sure the root system doesn't have rotted roots like this one has. So when to do that. Now you see the circling roots in all of these? Plants want to anchor themselves in the ground. So they try to take the roots away from the center of the plant.
Okay.
Well, what happens when they're in any kind of container, whether it's a round container or a square container, they hit the sides of the container and then they start making the shape of the container.
Right.
And sometimes you can buy plants that are like, if the top looks good and it's got a little bit too many roots in it, sometimes I will buy them and then you can score them at least 4 places because that stops that circling, because all the roots tend to want to anchor and grow away from the plant. So when you cut it, it stops that circling pattern.
That's good. Okay.
Old wounds. If you've looked at especially the base of trees and large shrubs, and make sure there's no old wounds there, because you want the plant to take all of its energy to establish in your yard, not fixing old wounds. And the same is true for suckers on trees and shrubs. If you have a whole row to choose from, and some have suckers and some don't get the ones with suckers because they're going to continue to want to be there. You would prefer a tree that doesn't have suckers on it. And severely crossing branches. you don't want to start with a problem of a crossing
Right.
branch. And so, and that also goes with the shape of the plant too. So don't get a tree or a large shrub that has crossing branches in it. Staked plants. Oh, there's a lot of staked plants. And there's nothing wrong with staking, but you've got to look for a few things. If you have a large plant in a container and it has a stake against it that looks old, and you can actually try to see the stake tie actually getting into the bark of the plant. And if you release it and you look at it, you can see the impression of the tie around the bark, and that's not a good sign. Some young trees are staked, and that's okay, but just remember, again, the principle of apical dominance. Hopefully there is a central leader, whether it's a shrub or a tree. I'm taking large shrubs and trees. You want to make sure there's a central stalk. If you get multiple stalks coming out from one plant, you want just one single one, preferably. And you've got to watch if that was staked. And if you take a couple of the stakes off and the plant starts to flop over, it's been staked too long. You can train a small tree that's been like that, but it's harder because then you take it home and you've got to stake it here and here and then try to get it to stand up. And it's just be careful with small, thin staked trees, especially, that they may fall over once the stake is taken away because they've never had a chance to get wind to blow it, to get reaction wood to be able to stand up straight.
That sounds like a lot of work.
It's a lot of work. It's definitely a lot of work. And of course, there's some plants that are grown as multi-trunked, either trees or shrubs or anything like that, and that's fine. Just make sure that each one that's coming out of the container is, separated from each other, and that they are straight and they're not crooked or have wounds on them or anything like that, that they're all evenly coming out of the container. And the root ball integrity. You got to look at the container and make sure that the plant is sitting correctly in a container, or if it's got a balled and burlapped plant, that when you push on the trunk of the tree, that it stays in place and doesn't move, because if it moves and the root ball stays in place, then it's most likely broken from that root ball, and you don't want that. And of course, the weeds. We just don't want weeds.
Definitely some in here.
I have enough weeds at home. I don't need more weeds.
You don't want to introduce any more?
I don't need any more. But and just watch when they're circling roots, and if you see roots at the surface of a container, that's a clue that it has been in that container for a long time. And sometimes the roots, as you can see, can cross over other roots, and that's going to end up girdling that tree eventually, or that large shrub. And you can cut those off, but I bet that nursery has been in the nursery for a very long time, and I would avoid that if I could and get one that doesn't have surface roots on it.
So if somebody wanted to try to, resurrect, these plants, I mean, they could.
They can, yeah, but you realize this one's got disease problems, and you're going to have to put some fungicide on this. And root rot is not, because we saw some live roots in this, it does have some hope, but I mean, it just depends on what you want to do. I don't particularly want to introduce more problems to my yard.
Yeah, you're right, because those spores could spread to your other plants. So yeah, you're exactly right. All right, Joella, that was good. All right, so don't make these mistakes, right?
Don't make these mistakes.
Don't make these mistakes.
Don't buy these plants.
All right, thank you much. I have a favorite weed, folks, and this is it. This is hairy bittercress. Produces a rosette of leaves first on the soil surface, and then up comes the rest of the plant. This plant has a small white flower, and it also produces a pod. And inside of the pod are seeds. So if you brush up against this weed, the seed pod explodes and it actually throws seed 10 feet. Pretty impressive, huh? Again, this is my favorite weed, hairy bittercress. We're out at the Agri Center. I have Wes Hopper, certified arborist here. And Wes, we're going to stop the chop
Stop the chop. I
We're gonna
like
stop the chop. That's what Jason Reeves always says.
it. Stop the chop.
Yes. Can you show us the correct way to prune these crepe myrtles?
I'll do the best I can. It's this looks like it's been a maintenance nightmare in the past, so we're going to look at it like artistic maintenance and try to prune this tree to where next year it won't require so much maintenance and do it the proper way. So we'll start by being able to get to the tree. I use my hand pruners and I'll remove these water sprouts that are going to poke me in the face as we're working. And also, since we're looking up most of the time, we'll throw our debris away so we don't trip over it while we're working. And there is a lot of old wounds on here.
A lot.
If it hits me in the face, I'm cutting it first. And also, on this tree, it has multiple stems. Notice I said tree.
Tree. I did notice you said
These have been trimmed like a hedge.
Wow, okay.
Crepe myrtle, just chopped, however you want to categorize it. It's a tree. When we certify arboretums, crepe myrtles are allowed on the list, and arboretum is a place where you can visit to learn how to identify trees. All right, now I mentioned multiple stems. Put these in my back pocket.
Tell us what you mean by multiple stems.
These are your stems right here.
Right.
There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stems on here.
Okay.
It's getting kind of crowded. You see how this is clustered up over here?
Yeah.
We're gonna eliminate this stem and try to eliminate some of the maintenance.
Okay.
And we're gonna cut it in the middle so we don't have any tears, nice and slow. Put my handsaw back up.
Nice clean cut.
Nice clean cut. Look what I've done. I've opened it up.
Wow.
We may get this to look like a tree after all. I usually like to stick with my pruners unless it's a large cut.
Okay.
I do have a set of loppers over there. But with this thin bark tree, sometimes your handsaw can actually scuff the bark. And we try to avoid that. Now look at me, I'm pruning on another stem that I feel like should not belong there.
Ah, so that was coming off too, right?
So let's eliminate some more of the maintenance. We're not gonna have the perfect shape of the stems, but I'll come back later and cut those the rest of the way off.
Okay.
But
Man, you really opened that thing up.
now I've got it open. And you can tell that we're around grass, so that means lawnmowers
Yes. And weed eaters.
and weed eaters. So I think they could probably use a little Roundup at the base to keep the grass from growing around, to keep the mowers away. But in this case, the maintenance guys are going to see these long stems that shoot out as an eye poker, in which they are.
Yeah.
We got a bird nest right here.
Yeah, I saw that.
I don't think there's anything in it, but anytime you have wildlife in a tree, come back to it. Let the wildlife survive. And we're gonna eliminate all this epicormic growth.
And what kind of growth is that?
Epicormic growth is growth that grows secondary.
Okay.
It's usually loosely attached, breaks easily,
Like water sprouts.
like water sprouts.
Right.
I don't want to eliminate all these. I just want to eliminate the junk.
How you doing the job on it, man?
Does it look the same?
No way.
Let's hope we achieve our goal. And I'm not just cutting sporadically. I'm putting my eye on it.
Okay.
And if you're using the hand pruners, definitely make sure that you keep your fingertips away. It's real easy to get it caught up in the blades.
And yours must be pretty sharp.
These are pretty sharp. If you notice, they have a longer handle, and you get a better cut with that. I'm going back a little bit past the growth collar, but we're trying to prevent that succulent epicormic growth or water sprouts from going crazy on it. See, like this is a nub right here. Can you see that?
Yeah, I can see that.
I like to get that a little bit cleaner because that's going to put out growth.
Okay.
It's going to go poof. Couple more of these. Step back and take a look at it. We got a broken one at the top. We're going to.
Yeah, I see a couple of them.
We're going to tend to. Let's get rid of this one. And Chris, you can see where they came in before, and they just went
right
straight across the top, and just completely eliminated the upper canopy. That's a lot of work. You can see the piles of what I have on the ground.
Yeah.
As far as the commercial companies go that tend to the crepe myrtles, I don't know if they get paid by the pound to dump the material, or what. But if you can eliminate some of the material you have to take to the landfill, then do it.
Hey, Wes, don't give away their secrets now. They might be doing that.
All right, let me grab my pole pruner here and let's work on these tips. Now, when I prune the upper outer canopy, I just want to remove these the old seed pods. I'm just reaching up, putting some of these back. Now these are definitely going to put out growth when they come back out.
Okay.
And I
Clean cuts on those. Really...
And I still may need to come back and take some more off. This one's broke, so let's cut it right there. And I'm not just randomly cutting, I'm trying to cut it at a node, which a node is a point of where your buds break. Let's see that I'm taking some of these off completely. You see that I'm not taking off nearly as much as the canopy as before. I believe that one of the reasons why people commit crepe murder or hacking it is because it's easier, and maybe it is easier on a crepe myrtle that's 40 feet tall.
Right.
The one thing about crepe myrtles is most of the time they're planted in the wrong place.
Right.
And they have to be maintained like that.
Right.
Because otherwise it's just going to grow into the house, under the gutter, under the soffit, and cause damage to your home.
Hey, what about our shoots down here at the bottom too?
We're going to eliminate those.
Okay.
I want to get rid of these two stubs.
All right.
Using my handsaw. Again, keep the blade away from you.
Well, what's something you've done this a time or two, man?
A few times.
Man. Well, you do a good job of that. Sure.
No, thank you. There we go.
Wow. Looks like a whole different tree. Right.
Yes. And now look, I got very little debris in comparison to what we would have had we just taken it all the way off.
Okay.
And I think it looks much better.
Yeah. I guess we do have these shoots down here too.
Oh,
I guess
yeah,
you knock
yeah.
those out for us. And...
Yeah, these are the sucker sprouts. Yeah, so you want to get these low as you can get them.
Now, if those keep coming back, what's the best way to, get them to slow down or get them to not come back? We get that question a lot. You just have to
Personally, from my experience, when these sprout up during the summertime, cut them off then.
Cut them off.
It's not so apt to grow back. And so if the part of the tree does not produce energy like the rest of it, it'll start slowing down, and eventually you hope for it to stop putting out like that.
Okay, good enough.
And these, if they're not cut down low enough, they're definitely going to grow back.
Oh yes, I've seen that.
And you can tell also by all these knots down here that there's been a lot of this grow back. But this is how I feel like they should be pruned.
All right, Wes, my friend.
Thank you.
Looks good, man.
Thanks.
Definitely appreciate that.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
We'll come back and see what it looks like later, huh?
I will. I definitely want to see the results.
I've had this aloe vera plant since this last fall. All winter, it has been sitting in a windowsill. Well, it's time to get this poor thing transplanted into a bigger container. We'll add some soil to this clay pot. Slide this plant out, and you see it's got some circling roots. We'll do a little bit of this, trying to get these roots to stop circling. I would check twice a year, in the spring and the fall, when you're bringing it inside or when you're taking it back outside, to see if it needs to be in a larger container. And then we can plant it in our pot and add just a little bit of soil around the edges. And you notice this pot isn't a whole lot bigger than the container that it was in, because aloe veras don't need a whole lot of moisture. They're a succulent, and so I don't want to put too much soil around the roots, because I want it to stay on what I call the dry side of moist. And there, this plant is a lot happier and with a little more root room.
All right, Joellen, here's our Q&A segment.
Yes,
You ready?
I'm ready.
These are great questions. All right, let's start with our first viewer email. This is an Encore azalea that I've had to nurture, but I wonder about the split bark. Is this okay? Also, I have split bark on a tree near these azaleas. Thank you, and this is from Elizabeth. Good picture there. So what do we think when we see split bark?
Well, it could be something that it was caused by the environment, by
Yes.
in the winter, it was cold, the sun was on it as a thin bark, and it may have split, and then it's caused all that. The problem is, I know she's nurtured it, but there are no nutrients going up and down the length of that section that's then split for the plant to have food
Right.
and water. Is all that's gone. I mean, it looks fairly healthy otherwise. I mean, maybe she could cut it. I mean, it looks like it needs a little bit more. It could get maybe some more light. Does it bloom? I wonder if it blooms.
Right, yeah, this would be something good to know.
Yeah, because
okay.
if it's not blooming and she's trying to nurture it, then maybe it needs a little more light in that particular area.
Yeah, so I'll just say keep it as comfortable as possible.
Yeah.
See, what happens. So there you have it, Elizabeth. So just keep doing what you're doing, and hopefully, everything turns out to be okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Here's our next viewer email. What are some beautiful trees like dogwood that can take direct sunlight? And this is Reginald in Houston, Texas.
Yeah, the native redbud. There are so many different varieties of that.
Love it.
There's white blooming varieties, and there's all different kinds of the pink and the purple varieties of that, in different color foliage and different shapes. There's weeping forms. Beautiful tree.
Agree.
Coosa dogwood. That is a dogwood. He's got a dogwood. So this would bloom after the leaves appear on it, and it can take more sun than the Florida dogwoods. Of course, then there's fringe trees. There's a lot of fringe trees are beautiful.
Love them.
There's both American and Chinese fringe trees, and both of them are beautiful. And of course, now it's hard to recommend cherry trees, but because of the ambrosia beetles now, they take over the thin bark of cherry trees. But cherry trees are pretty, and they may not be as long-lived as some of the other trees, just because of all the diseases and things that they get. I mean, there's a lot of stuff, but they're pretty, and it depends on where it is and how long he wants it to stay there. But the Kwanzan, like at the, and the Yoshino cherries that they have around the Botanic Gardens in the Washington, D.C., that could work there. Also, there's one called Okami. It's one of the first ones to bloom in the spring that's real pretty. It might be, of the three, that would probably be the more hardy of the three and live with less problems. But they all are thin-barked, and the ambrosia beetles attack them, and they get the shot hole diseases in their leaves. And so, it's hard to recommend them, but they are pretty.
Yeah, they are pretty.
But they're short, maybe short-lived if you don't decide to spray on them, with diseases and insects.
And I thought about the smoke tree. Do you like the smoke tree?
I love the smoke tree. There's some purple leaf varieties that look nice, and it's unusual. It's not a showy bloom. But the bloom looks like smoke, so that's where it gets its name. So I like those also.
Okay. So again, those are some nice trees that you can grow in direct sunlight.
In direct sunlight.
All right. So thank you for that question, Reginald. Here's our next viewer email. Every time I plant vegetables like beets and turnips, and in this case radish, A majority of the plant's roots grow on top of the soil instead of down into the soil. I use raised beds and have compost in all of them. What am I doing wrong? And this is John in Memphis, Tennessee. So is he doing anything wrong?
Well, not yes and no, because, he's sown the seeds and they're germinating, but they may not be in the depth of the soil to be able to, stand up the way he wants them. If I had what he has there with that picture, I would probably just take some more soil and build up around each one of them, so then it is completely buried. I mean, I don't see too much wrong with that.
Right, I would do that too, because from the picture, this seems like you could just
put some more soil on
put
that.
some more soil around it, because we do know the majority of your vegetables have shallow root systems.
Yes.
Right. They don't have deep tap root systems. So it seems like you can.
Yeah, it looks to me like he could take each one of them and puts a little bit more soil around all of those so that they would be deeper in the soil.
Right, because plant depth, is going to be key, of course.
Right.
Just plant a little deeper, pull up.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to plant the seeds in
not
deeper.
the seed, yeah, right.
But once they come up and they're doing that,
right.
I would like to see more soil around them.
Yeah, because we don't know if these are seeds or transplants. But I wouldn't plant the seeds too deep, of course. But if they're transplants, then
yeah, you can transplant them and put some more
soil around it. It should be fine. Okay. But he has raised beds and compost, so he's doing the right thing.
He's doing the right thing.
You're doing the right thing. So thank you for the question, John. Jordan, that was fun.
It
Thank
was.
you for being here. Remember, we love to hear from you. Send us an email or letter. The email address is familyplot@wkno.org, and the mailing address is Family Plot, 7151 Cherry Farms Road, Cordova, Tennessee 38016. Or you can go online to familyplotgarden.com. That's all we have time for today. Thanks for joining us. It's getting time to plant. We have over 1,000 videos and all sorts of resources on lots of gardening topics over on familyplotgarden.com. Go check it out. Be sure to join us next week for the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South. Be safe.